Let's give these two gentlemen a hand for coming out here.
I tell everybody now I've been in the business about 60 pounds. When you live on a tour bus, you become very familiar with Pilot and Flying J, and you know, it's just one of those things. Who was here last time? I see some familiar faces. Okay, so some of you will hear just a quick little repeat on me. Some of you I know personally, some of you I work with. So thank you guys once again. Doak, thanks for having us. My background in a nutshell, I wasn't talented enough and didn't have the desire enough to learn an instrument, and I couldn't sing. My voice changed when I was like 13, so unless like the Motown bands come back, I was out. And it wasn't gonna happen for me, but I've always wanted to promote. I've always been that guy. You know, I've always been the little hustler, the little seller, and I always tease people is how can a GED kid who was on the free lunch program in school have a great career in the music business? Is you just find talented people. And then you go out and plagiarize lazy people. Because if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, and most people won't. So I went and found the places where most people won't do the work, and that's where I usually will send the artists that I work with. One of the things, as Doak mentioned, I was working with Taylor Swift early on. I was originally a radio guy. I did 15 years of radio, and then Scott Borchetta, when he started Big Machine Records, brought me out of the radio side to do records and promotion. And I had helped launch a program called Nashville to You, where we just basically, I wanted to find out why when artists came to town, we never saw them play. I was like, okay, wait a minute, you bring them in, you schmooze us, you play for 3 or 4 people, you give us free CDs, and you get in the car and you leave, or you take us out to a dinner. Why can't we ever see the artist in front of a crowd? And they're like, well, you know, crowds find it really tough to really come see somebody that they don't know. And I've always asked questions. I've been that guy. I said, well, something's only unfamiliar if you don't play it. So I have the radio station and I have a bar. I said, if I start playing it, I don't program for the rest of the world, so it doesn't matter to my fans whether it's on a chart or not. So I started playing all these new acts that nobody had heard of at the time. Sugarland, Little Big Town, Rodney Atkins, Craig Morgan, all these bands that were at the bottom of the chart, because I knew if I maybe supported them, they would come out and support my radio station. So to make a long story short, I created this tour, got these artists paid, and just really loved the new artists. I loved their hunger. I loved the country music format, and I know not everybody here is a country music person, but what I've learned is that music is contagious, whether it be good or bad. If we're walking down Broadway and we hear something just terrible, we stop and we look. And if we hear something good, we usually stop and we look. So I said, what if we could start creating opportunities, because it's such an impulsive business, to where people can start making money. So I ended up taking Taylor out on radio tour, and she just was eager to learn. She was 17 years old, she was giddy, she had a lot of questions, I had a lot of answers, and we just built this relationship of trust and being willing to try what no one else was willing to try. Because what I said to her was, I said, if we're willing to do what no one else is willing to do, we can get results that no one else is willing to get. She took that to heart, and that's what she wanted to learn. She wanted to do these things. So I've been blessed. A few years ago, we did this thing called the Nashville to You Campground Tour. Jordan just showed up. Jordan, raise your hand. Jordan actually came out with us. It was a lot of fun. What we did is we tried to find places where people were captive and couldn't leave, and that seemed to be campgrounds. And we'd roll a 40-foot Prevost bus with artists that no one had ever heard of, and we'd do a 2-hour show on Friday night, 2-hour show on Saturday night. We'd get to go eat s'mores, and those who drank, drink beers, and hang out with all these people and get to build these relationships, and it was a lot of fun. So we've always done things that are different. They're not always the most luxurious, and they're not always, but what it does is what I like to teach is artist to fan engagement. Because that person, when they fall in love with you or your music, they really don't care what your chart position is. They want access to you. They want exclusivity to you. They don't want to be on a list. They don't want to feel that they're one of millions. They all want to think they discovered you and they've been supporting you from the beginning. And there's ways that you can do that that give them that opportunity to feel like they own you. And that's what Taylor did better than anyone, is she made that little girl feel like she read her diary and wrote that song for her, and then she would talk to her on MySpace. And at the time, that's all we had. The tools that are available today, the ability to get your music recorded at an affordable price, the ability to get it in the hands of the consumer has never been better. I mean, everybody's here with an iPad. We can write it, record it, sell it, collect payment, and follow up with them all from an iPad. That has never been possible before. There used to be so many different gatekeepers that you needed to have in order to get to the consumer. That's not happening anymore. So I launched a program called the Music Industry Blueprint. I found everyone wanted the secrets. Everyone wanted to know the blueprint. I felt that I could become a virtual manager for a lot of people because one, most folks can't afford a manager. Two, most people don't know what a manager does. They just think that, wow, in order to be successful, I have to have a manager. Not true. I was a no-name manager helping with Taylor. So I proved right away that you don't have to come from a pedigree of the good old boys club and all this kind of stuff. If you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to go use the tools that are made available for you, and most importantly, if you're willing to educate yourself, there is no magic pill, there is no cookie cutter formula. If not, we would have 1,000 Lady Antebellums right now and 10,000 Justin Biebers running around. Thank goodness we don't have 10,000 Justin Biebers running around. But if it were that easy, there's also someone here that I'm working with who's been on a major label and sat and waited and was handcuffed and was at the mercy of what they wanted to do for her career. Now she's taking things into her own hands, and now she's having fun again, and she's smiling again, and she's not dependent on anybody but herself and the team that she builds. That's what we try to teach with the Music Industry Blueprint. I launched this website just giving free advice away. Here's 5 keys not to get screwed. You know, I didn't know any other thing to call it. You know, a lot of people were coming to town, meeting guys that had worked with somebody, and they were talking you into using the best session players in Nashville and using the biggest video directors because that's who everyone else uses. And $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 later, you were no farther along than when you got here. And that's not the case anymore. You don't have to do that. And we're here to say that. Doesn't make me the most popular guy on Music Grow, but I'm just here to share with you that if you're willing to take the time to find the information, we're willing to get that information. Organizations like, you know, MusicStartsHere.org, they're going out and they're taking the time to do the research so you don't have to. So when Doak says go to the website and check it out, do so. That means he's been scouring the internet, finding what he feels is the best of the best for what you need. Same thing with the Music Industry Blueprint. I don't need to teach you how to sing. If you can't sing, you don't belong here. Just, let's be honest. And what we learned is it's not about the singing. Taylor made a career for the first 5 years of her career not being able to sing. This is the best record she's done at 23 years old. Why? Because females' voices change. Right around 13 or 14, right around 16 or 17, and right around 22, 23 years old. Now this is her real voice, but she had done all the work ahead of time to build that audience so she could go and, you know, sell 1 million records first week, which isn't too shabby. The rich keep getting richer is basically what happens. But the thing that I try to always tell people about that, she did the work. And she was willing to do what everyone else. She didn't have American Idol like Carrie had. She didn't have Nashville Star like Miranda had. She had a work ethic, and she had the ability to be different, try things different. So that's what I'll encourage you. Also, too, if your phones are on, just turn the volume down, but keep them on. My Twitter handle is Rick Barker Music. If I don't say at least one thing that gets retweeted, I failed you. So feel free to retweet anything that we say. One of my favorite sayings is weird wins, because most people won't do weird, so that eliminates a good majority of the competition. I don't know if that will fit with all the characters, but that's probably a good one. Last week when we were here, I shared a lot. You can go to the website. It's musicindustryblueprint.com. Al, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Go to the website. I've got a blog, and you get some free videos, and there's a way for you to even get more free information. And then there's a way, if you want to discuss working further together, we can do that. But we won't talk about that right now. What we're going to do, I'm going to introduce you to Ronnie, and then we're going to open it up for questions. That's what was so cool last week, is we were going to be here for about an hour and a half, and we were here almost 3 hours last month, excuse me, answering your questions, because it's about you. And if you have a question that we can answer, we want to be able to do that for you. I'm blessed to know some really cool, talented people. Like I said, I've made a good living hanging out with smarter and better looking people than me, like Mr. Ronnie Brown here. So last week, I asked everyone, if I'm going to invite my friends, who would you like to hear from? And it kept coming back. Publishers and producers is who they felt, someone that they would like to talk to. And I just happen to know somebody who runs a record company, is a publisher, is a producer, who was part of an A&R team that launched some of the biggest stars of the genre in the 90s, and Ronnie, and we work together on a couple projects right now. So I asked Ronnie if he'd be willing to come and share with you guys. So give it up for Ronnie. I'm going to let him tell you guys a little bit about his background, and then let's open it up for questions. And it can be on anything. If we don't know the answers, we'll find it and drive you to it. We also have Al here, who's got many years of radio experience, so he might even be able to help with some of these questions. Eric Arnold, my partner in the Music Industry Blueprint. Eric, raise your hand. Eric was at William Morris for a long time. He's currently involved with a company called Warp Speed. His specialty, besides being a kick-butt dad, is sponsorships, how to go out and find the money. Also, he was Steel Magnolia's manager for a long time, worked at Bad Management, which is an interesting name for a management company, but they are great management, but they're called Bad Management, and it's initials of people. So without any further ado, here's Ronnie Brown.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate you having me, Rick. Joe, thank you for having me here. This is great. Good to see everyone. As Rick said, I've been in the business for a long time, and to give you a little rundown of what my career looked like. I moved here in 1984 and worked some odd jobs and was a keyboard player. I played keyboards in an R&B band with some old classic R&B artists, Clifford Curry and the Cornelius Brothers and Sister Rose, and I was on the band, on the road and doing that kind of stuff. And I had a friend in '89 that was working in A&R at MCA Records, and at the time he's like, there's a position opening up in the mailroom, you know, you need to get this job, you know. He's like, but you got to quit the road, you got to come in here and try it out for 2 weeks. And so I had to like quit the guys on the road like on the way to a show. I was like, I got to go do this. They were like, oh, that's cool. So it all worked out, and at the time MCA was really jamming. Of course, they already had George Strait for years, and Reba McEntire, and Waylon Jennings, and a lot of stuff that was doing really well. But at the time, I started working in the mailroom. About a year later, they signed Trisha Yearwood and Vince Gill. The company was just doing really amazing, so there was no turnover at the company. Nobody left, so I was there for I worked in the mailroom for 3 years, you know. But it was amazing what they paid the mail people, so I was like, yeah, this is great. But a friend of mine went to work for a major publishing company who was an A&R, another good friend of mine, and Tony Brown offered me the job as a junior A&R person, and that was a real thrill. I was like, oh, I can't wait, because I didn't want to do record promotion or marketing. I was like, I want to be an A&R. You know,
Now explain to them what A&R is for those that might not know.
A&R is Department of Artist and Repertoire, which means A&R finds the songs, they find the artists, they oversee making the recordings and work closely with the producers to make sure that, you know, you got the right artists, you got the right songs, and then, you know, and hopefully, you know, promotion department will like it. And of course, at that time, you know, the promotion department did not do any A&R like they do a lot of now, but, you know, at the time, you know, of course, Tony Brown was a genius, so nobody questioned anything, because everything he touched was gold. So, so basically, that's what A&R is. And so I spent a lot of time, the first thing I did was do single edits. So anything that you heard on the radio, like Vince Gill or Trisha Yearwood, or if there was an edit for a single, I did it. And at the time, we had tape. I had to do it with a razor blade and splice up tape, and then put it on a cassette, and play it for Tony Brown, and then take it to the mastering lab, and then do it. And usually it all worked out. So that was a great experience. But I got to hang out a lot with, we had a lot of artists like George Jones, and Vince Gill, Trisha Yearwood, the Mavericks. They were always drinking tequila in the kitchen, and they were just a real experience to watch their career grow. So I got to see a lot of things there, and just spending a lot of time with Tony Brown was amazing, and we got along really great. And then kind of came, about 7 years later, something happened in '96. I was like, I'm tired of this. You know, it's like, the record label's doing great, but you know, we're all weird people in the music business anyway. So I had one quirk, and I was like, I quit. One day I walked in and told me, I was like, I quit. Because I wanted to produce and write more, you know, and it just, when working at a record label is a tough job. It's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of work, you know, and it's really intense, you know. And so I didn't really have time. I really came here to be a writer and a producer. So, and probably should have stayed at MCA and told Tony that's what I wanted to do, but no, I didn't do that. So anyway, I retired for 2 years on no money, and I was ready to get back in the business, and Jewel Coburn, who works for 1010 Music, a major publishing company, independent publishing company, offered me a job. I started as catalog manager, and then quickly started pitching songs, and she had known me from MCA, of course, and we, at the time, writing, when I went to work for 1010, Keith Urban was a writer there. Nobody knew who he was yet. He was known around town, but he not had any hit records. Keith Urban and Angela Cassett were both writers there. And then right after I started working there, we signed a writer named Harley Allen as well. And Harley had a bunch of hits by Alan Jackson and Blake Shelton, including The Baby, The Little Girl by John Michael Montgomery, Tough Little Boys. And I had a great run with him and became really wonderful friends, and we had a lot of success together with his songs. And I worked a lot with Keith Urban and working on co-write, setting up co-write appointments for Keith Urban, and spent a lot of time with him and watched him, and everybody knew it was just a matter of time, you know, before something happened, you know. So watched that first album come along, and worked with a lot of writers. And then after, I worked for 1010 like 10 years, and then left there and started my own company 3 years ago with 2 other business partners. And the first writer we signed was Greg Bates, who's now on Big Machine Records. We don't have, Greg's not with us anymore. He wrote with us for 1.5 years. At the time, I didn't have the financing to keep him on, but we had a lot of catalog, and I watched him grow and helped him a lot with his demos and was in the studio with him. And among that, I continued to work with people I had worked with at 1010, including Angelina Presley, who's in the Pistol Annies, and really developed her, and actually had to teach her how to play guitar a lot. You know, she knew how to play, but it's like, you got to play guitar. Now she's just like, you know, like just knew you had it, just knew you had it. So, in a nutshell, and then right now we have 2 artists, Dylan Taylor, who's a young, phenomenal songwriter and artist who's just really been touring and burning up the road, and we've had some stuff in a couple of Showtime specials recently, and we also work with another artist that Rick introduced me to, Miss Cora Keller, who's really phenomenal, and we're working on a record for her, hopefully in the summer. And we have a publishing catalog, and we basically work on trying to get songs recorded and work on, you know, a lot of trying to develop the young artists to have hit records at some point, you know. So that's basically it. MCA, 1010, now my own company, and who knows what the future holds.
There you go.